Thank you again for being here, and especially as I give my thoughts on how I got involved in the gluten challenge. Especially delighted to have Charlene Fry and her husband Vance. Actually, my story actually begins with this lady of how I got involved with gluten. I shouldn't say she introduced me to the gluten problem. You'll understand that in just a few minutes, so when I get to the rest of the story. But I was actually in this room right here in July of '09, more than 2 years ago, and someone came down the hall and said, "Buddy, there's a lady down in the office area that wants to talk to you." I said, I didn't think I had an appointment to see anybody, and I said, "Oh, and yeah," and I said, "Well, who is it?" And said, "It's Charlene Fry." And I said, "Oh, great, I haven't seen her in a while. I'm coming right down." And so I made my way down to the office, and there was this beautiful lady there, Charlene, and we've been friends with Charlene and Vance, and there's my man Vance. But as Charlene and I began to talk that day, she said, "I just wanted to come by and visit with you." She had dropped Vance off at the gym, and that gave her a little time, and she said, "I just had been intended to come by and talk to you." Because we've known Charlene and Vance for many, many years, they were on the journey with us, and during the time of my wife's cancer and her death in June the previous year in '08, and so we were 13 months out from that, and Charlene said, "I just want to come by and chat with you and visit with you for a minute and see how you're doing." And we talked about old times and years gone by and fun things that we've done together. And then she said, "But I want to talk to you about something else." I said, "Okay." She said, "Now, if you don't want to talk about this, you just stop me, and I'll stop in mid-sentence, and we won't go any further. We won't say anything at all." And I said, I was curious what she was going to say. And she said, "I have a friend that I would like for you to meet." She said, "I've really felt on several occasions that I should come over here and talk to you about this." But she said one night after church, Sunday night I think it was, at their church, she came to the parking lot. We were having activity here, and she said, "I actually came in the parking lot and said if I could spot you or find somebody that knew where you were." But so this was a later occasion, so she finally was talking to me, and she said, "I want to talk to you about a friend I want you to meet." And I said, "Well, Charlene, that's very kind of you," but I said, "I'm still married." 13 months after my wife's death, and I still felt that way. If you've been down that journey, you know what I'm talking about. But I said, "It's very, very sweet." "Well, it's okay. We're going to have some people out to the house and a little party, and I'd like to invite you, and we're going to invite this lady." And I said, "Well, if you want to, I'll come to your house anytime. We've had some great fun together, and anytime you want to come, whoever you want to invite is fine." She said, "Okay," and then she said, "I'll let you know." So a few days later, she called, and she says, "What about this date?" And I said, "That looks good, and I'll be there." So I show up at their house for the party, and it's a party of 4. Me and another, and this is the other right here, Dolores Berry. And that was the night I met this precious lady. And now you understand when I said that she introduced me to the gluten problem. Ha ha, yeah, okay. You heard her story last week, and that's when we began to see each other, and I began to learn actually on that night. We went out to a restaurant, and she very, very discreetly pulled the waiter aside and whispered something in his ear. And I thought, that's kind of strange, but they agreed, and he said, "No, we're going to take care of that." And I thought, what's going on, Well, she was talking to him about gluten-free. And, of course, I didn't know anything about it. And I inquired a little bit, thought it was strange, or, thought maybe she had some kind of an allergy or something. And so then I started knowing zero about gluten. I mean, if you'd given me a quiz and had the word gluten on there, I would have not only not known what it was, I couldn't have spelled it, couldn't have given you a clue as to what it was related to, because I was just that far removed from the whole scene of what now has kind of become part of my life, and I'm glad it has. And so we started there a little over 2 years ago. And as we would go out to eat, And I don't know, maybe it's because of the way I grew up. See, my background, I'm from Alabama. I tell you, I'm born, reared, and ruined in Alabama. Never have to explain that to anybody. They say, oh, okay, got you, understand what that means. I don't know what it means. I read it in a book somewhere, and I've repeated it thousands of times, and most people just take it and interpret it and give it its own interpretation. But I guess I've tried to be a Southern gentleman most of my life, and I always thought, you know, if I'm out with a lady and there's certain things she cannot eat, well, I'm not going to eat in front of her what she cannot eat, especially bread, even though I enjoyed having hot roll and hot bread. I just decided that I would not eat bread when we were out together or any of the other kinds of things she couldn't eat. And mostly if she could eat it, I'd eat it, and that's the way we started. And we ate a lot of meals together. I was very fortunate to shortly in time that she began fixing some very special meals. And I'm telling you, they were very good. And so about 3 months into that, I had my annual checkup at the doctor, and and he put me on the scale, and he said, "You've lost some weight." I said, "Really? I thought I took my belt up a little bit." He said, "Yeah." He said, "What are you doing?" And I took my billfold out. By that time, I had a picture of Dolores in my billfold, and I said, "Well, I've been chasing this pretty lady around for the last 3 months." And he said, "Good, keep doing that. It's working. You're losing weight." And he had checked me out, and he says, "Nothing wrong with you." He said, "You're healthy," but he said, "Keep doing it." Well, he said, "But I do want to see you in another 3 months or so." So about the 6-month period when I went back to see him, I had lost more weight, and he took me off of blood pressure medicine. He said, "Put those up. You won't need those anymore for a while." Well, at 9 months, I had lost 50 pounds just on a gluten-reduced diet. Now, I don't think I'm gluten intolerant. I don't have celiac disease. But for me and those people who work with me here at the church, watch this. And they kept asking me. One little lady came up to me in the kitchen on Wednesday night, and she said, "You don't need to lose any more weight. You're going to get a skinny neck if you lose any more weight." So I don't know what that meant. I don't know if I have a skinny neck or not, but she said, "You've lost enough weight." But the only thing I can attribute it to was that in reducing the gluten intake, I got off of what I call gluten addiction. Now, this is my interpretation of what happened. I've recommended to several people that they try a simple little scheme we came up with. It's simply if there are things going on in your life, there are 3 things you need to do. Reduce your stress, get plenty of rest, and try the 8-week gluten-free test. I can memorize that, can't you? Reduce your stress, get plenty of rest, and try the 8-week gluten-free test. And we challenged several people with that, and a lot of them like it. And they say, good things begin to happen. My sister came to visit us not too long ago, and she went on the gluten-reduced diet, called us a few days later, and she said, "My joint pain has gone away, I'm sleeping better at night, and my family says my personality has improved. I'm not as grouchy as I used to be." Well, all of those kinds of things, believe it or not, are part of a gluten toxic problem, and that's in the literature. You can read about it. Things that are related to this. So we started with the 50 pounds of reduction in gluten-reduced diet. I lost the 50 pounds, and then we started talking more about, if this worked for me, it could work for others. So why don't we try to put something together and share it? We talked about her story because she had just a wealth of information that she could share, and she's already done that. You picked up on it. So I was encouraging her to write something or write articles or write a book or something. So we've been sort of collecting information. I've been on it and thinking more about it because I'm convinced in my heart that we've got a real problem in our culture, and the problem that we have with too much gluten in our diets. And that's a fairly modern phenomenon in our culture. So we have a real problem. We have a problem with obesity, and it's a concern. And I'll just close with this because these folk from Tyner, again, knew the journey that I was on, and my wife struggled with obesity. I really believe that her rare cancer that took her life, she was the first person that had cancer on either side of her family. never in the history of her family, either side, had ever had cancer. And yet she lived in a time frame that I'm talking about with you and trying to get more people to understand that from the 50s to the present, we have brought something on ourselves in our culture through consumerism, through convenience, and through demand for things cheap and more of it and quick and fast. And our consumerism culture has brought us to a point where we are now overdosing on gluten because it's in everything.